everyone, and welcome to Transfer Weekly. This now episode number 8. We really are kicking in the 2024 season. Great to be back for another episode. I'm your host, Chris McCarthy. Some great guests coming up on this episode. A new face for Transfer Weekly, Jeroen Demmendaal, the second ever staff member here at FIA Series, and the man who's going to cover the Americas for us here at FIA Series. And given the drivers we have announced this week, we thought it was a great time to bring him on. Jeroen, thank you very much for joining us for the first time here on Transfer Weekly. Great to have you with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's great fun.
Good stuff. And we also have a driver that we're going to be interviewing later. We've already recorded that with an American driver, that is, someone who's going to be racing in Formula 3. But someone who has raced in Formula 3 is our special guest for this week, and that is Alice Powell. Alice, thank you very much for joining us again. You were with us on Series 1. Great to have you back for Series 2.
It's an absolute pleasure.
Good stuff. Well, let's get straight into it. We're going to jump from Formula 3 for Formula 2. We have plenty of transfers to get through. If you're new to Transfer Weekly, we cover all the transfers in Formula 2, Formula 3, FRECA F1 Academy. That's kind of where we focus, but we do also cover some of the other major transfer stories as well, and give you some headlines at the end. So we're going to go right to the top of the tree then, because we had a pretty big announcement, one that many of us were expecting. That's up in Formula 2, up with the reigning champions, with ART Grand Prix, who announced that Victor Martins is going to be staying with them for the 2024 season. Alice, I'm going to come to you for this. He was our top rookie last season. I think many are going to be labeling him the favorite. He's going to be going in top seed, took that win at Silverstone, on the podium 10 times. He's got a solid teammate in F3 vice champion Zach O'Sullivan, and he's going to have a great battle, I'm sure, with Ollie Bearman, who was just behind him in the championship. How do you see Victor Martins going into this season? He looked good in testing. Do you think he can follow in the footsteps of his countryman Teo Pourchaire and go and take that title?
Yeah, I think so. As you said, Ollie Bearman and himself, Antonelli, we can chuck him in there as well. I'm really, really interested to see how he gets on from skipping F3 and sort of jumping up straight from FRECA. But yeah, Victor's gonna be up there, isn't he? He's got a very good rapport. He works very well with ART. They are obviously very strong in Formula 2 as well, with Teo winning the championship. So you'd be silly to not label him as a favourite. And I think if he can just keep the consistency there, because there was obviously times throughout 2023 where he was a little bit up and down and a few mistakes, but we have to remember that he was still a rookie, and so was Ollie Bearman as well. And I think those were the two real standout rookies, to be honest, of that season. So he's got a season under his belt. He's done a lot of learning, and of course he'll be hoping that all that he's learned he'll take into this season. So I certainly expect him to be up there and one of the favourites for sure.
Yeah, his championships seem to come every 2 years, don't they? 2020 Formula and a Euro Cup, 2022 FIA F3. It seems to be swinging in the way that 2024, there has to be another championship on the way. So let's see what he can do this season. He's going to have Zach O'Sullivan alongside him, a whole raft of drivers to fight with. And I think that's only 3 seats left now in Formula 2. But before we talk anything else, we are going to be talking next about Formula 3, and in particular, American driver Max Esterson, who's been confirmed with Genza. But a little earlier, I spoke to him about that announcement. He's going to be flying the flag for the Americans in the championship this year. So let's go and hear what he had to say. I think I'll start by asking you, how does it feel to have the news announced, I guess, and how is it to be confirmed as a Formula 3 driver for 2024?
Yeah, it's pretty awesome, because I mean, only starting in cars a few years ago, I never would have thought that I'd make it, to Formula 3. It's maybe the most competitive junior series there is. So it's a big task ahead of me. But yeah, there's only 30 of us. So I'm really lucky to be able to be, doing what I do and racing around the world this year.
You touched on your story there. It wasn't long ago, as you said, you've got the iRacing on the back of your car, I guess, for a reason. It wasn't long ago that you were into your gaming, and that's really all you did in terms of your racing. That was your only relationship with motorsport. It's been a pretty quick journey through motorsport for you, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, to start, my dad mostly has been involved in motorsport for a long time. He was an engineer in the 80s, so we've always liked it. but it was never something I thought I would do as a driver, at least. Yeah, I started on the sim maybe when I was 10 on iRacing, and just for fun to begin with, and then it got more and more serious until I was doing like the pro level events maybe in 2018, 2019, and then from there my mom wanted me out of the house, stop playing video games, I guess. So she said, why don't you try the real thing? So I started karting a bit, nothing serious again, kind of just for fun, because it was, I mean, doing it on a serious level was so like far out of reach. It just didn't seem like a possibility. And then I tested a car for the first time in 2020, and it just felt right. So it's all kind of gone quickly from there.
Yeah, I mean, and then I guess people would have known you then from GB3, but you also then did get a chance to race in Formula 3 last season. This is not going to be your first time racing a Formula 3 car. You got to do 2 weekends with what is now Rodin Motorsport at Silverstone in Hungary. How were those weekends for you? Tell us about the whole experience of what it was like jumping in for those 2 weekends.
I was quite lucky that the round I had to fill in for to start with was Silverstone, because I knew it already from racing here in the UK for 2 or 3 years beforehand. So that was quite lucky, because it's a lot to take in on your first weekend, not only the on-track stuff, but yeah, there's a lot going on off-track, more than I'm used to. So yeah, for it to be Silverstone was a help. And then Hungary, obviously, even though it was my second weekend, it was almost harder in some ways than the first one, because I didn't know the circuit at all. So that was quite tricky, because you don't get much practice really. I had 3 or 4 laps and then was straight into quali. So, and quali of course was like a damn track, which is kind of the worst run you're learning.
And 18th there as well. So it was a pretty good result in what was very tough conditions. You mentioned a damp track. It might as well have been in the race as well. I mean, it was the tire wear there was quite excessive, wasn't it? It was very extreme. So that must have been a really good challenge to face, I guess, but before the season.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully it's not like that this year at Hungary. No. I don't think it will be, but yeah, it was interesting. I think I started to get the hang of it by the feature race, so that was good. Yeah, I mean, it was almost worth dropping all the way to the back and just cruising around and waiting for a safety car almost, because it was that bad. But yeah, it was a good experience, because I've never had to do any tire management in Formula Ford, obviously, or even in GB3. So it was something new to learn.
Let's talk about your team then, Jensen Motorsport. They've had a great season last year, one of the best they've had for a long time. How's it been getting to know them? You're with them at the postseason test. You're with them over at Macau. I mean, that must have been a fantastic experience as well. With Matthias as well, who's been confirmed as one of your teammates for next season. Yeah,
Matthias and I were both able to do all the tests with the team, so it definitely helps when you're not hopping around and kind of feeling out different teams, because you have you get a set program, who you're working with, and you're actually working towards the next year, like confirmed, which is always a bit easier than kind of moving around a lot. But yeah, it's been great so far. It's obviously a smaller team, but that comes with its advantages and disadvantages. But it's nice to have a kind of a family environment, and yeah, we're all getting along really well, I think, which is important. But yeah, they, like you said, they had a good season last year, so there's not really any excuses on my end.
And also, we must talk about the fact that you are going to be possibly the sole flag bearer as well for the United States. How does that feel as well? I mean, it's the flag seems to have been in there now for the last few seasons. Is that something you're proud of?
For sure, 100%. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely tough to crack into the European racing. I think even if you're from the UK, it's also like separate. So yeah, coming from the US, I guess it's not easy for many of us to get in, just because I think in Europe, maybe you just grow up karting all together, and then you move to F4 together, and then a bunch move up to regional or F3 together. So to come in from the outside, I think it's a bit harder, but yeah, I'm glad to be here.
And I realized I haven't asked this yet. I can't go this in without asking this. We'll end by asking this. Are you excited? I mean, you must be very, very excited for this season.
Of course, yeah. I mean, we're on the same weekends as F1. We're there at the main events of all motorsports. So it's kind of the big show, almost. I mean, we're not in F1 yet, but we're almost there.
Thank you for joining us, Max. Thanks for taking the time, and best of luck for this season.
Yeah, thanks, Chris.
So that Max Esterson, great to chat with him earlier. He has been confirmed at Genza Motorsport for this season. He makes the jump up from the GB3 Championship, raced with Fortec last season, finished in a good way as well. Jeroen, I'll come to you for this as you do cover the Americas for us. Got on the podium in the last round of the season. Not brand new to Genza, not brand new to Formula 3, has been with them over at Macau and did a couple of rounds last season as well. So he's not going to be going in completely new when he gets to Bahrain. He did have those 2 rounds at Silverstone in Hungary, didn't he? I mean, a great representative for the Americans next year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course, what we've seen, of course, in recent years is that we've, more and more Americans have actually started to climb that European ladder. We've seen a few other guys like, Correa and Hunter Yaney and others. I think with Max Esterson, this will be a learning year for him, right? I mean, a lot of the competition and the tracks might be new to him. At the same time, I mean, a points finish here and there, I think that would definitely be his goal. And yeah, I'm very curious to see how he will do. I mean, he was one of those few Americans that didn't actually go into the road to Indy back in his home country, but very early on made the jump with that Team USA scholarship into Europe. Won, I think, the Walter Hayes Trophy also in Formula Ford. Yeah. So yeah, definitely a talented young man.
Genza, good season for them last year as well. They had a fantastic year. Showed they could get rookies up to speed. Do you think that's going to play into his favour, even if this is going to be a bit of maybe a developing season for him?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it helps a little bit with the expectation levels, I guess, sort of. I mean, traditionally, Genza is maybe not one of the absolute top teams in F3, but like you say, they have shown that they can sort of be a good place for a rookie to really develop their skills and really grow into a new series like F3. So yeah, definitely. I think he made a good choice here.
Yeah, well, 18th in Hungary at the sprint was his best result in those 2 rounds, and did pretty good overall. He was 20th at Macau, and points on the board is his expectations or his goals going into this season, which I think is a pretty sensible target. Okay, let's stay with Formula 3. Another driver I want to speak about who might be setting slightly higher expectations, Alice, is going to be Red Bull Junior Tim Tramnitz, who becomes the first driver to join MP Motorsport for this season. He makes the jump up from FRECA, where he finished 3rd last season with RHGP, 3 wins and 10 podiums. And the stat that stood out to me most when I was commentating on him was that he always qualified in the top 10. I think when we watch Formula 3 and particularly yourself when you're racing it, qualifying is a big part of that series, isn't it? With the system they have, just one qualifying for 2 races. Do you think that's going to be a big thing that plays into his favor, that he's so consistent in it?
Yeah, massively. I think that's going to play a huge part. He'll be hoping that he gets off on a good start and does keep that record going of qualifying in the top 10. But interesting to see how he adapts from the qualifying sessions that they have in FRECA. Obviously, the tyre seems to last a bit longer than it does in F3, and it's not sort of split into it's Q1 and then Q2, isn't it, in FRECA? So he's got it all together, and we know how frantic and crazy some of these qualifying sessions in Formula 3 can be, and we've had some quite weather-changing ones as well. So it'll be interesting to see how he adapts to that. And also, FRECA often has a decent amount of testing, doesn't it, before the race weekend, on the Thursday or the Friday, whereas F3, they only get one 45-minute practice session. So he's got to adapt quickly. But, he's had great results. As you said, finished in 3rd place in his 2nd season of FRECA last year. So a talent. Red Bull clearly thinks so as well. So I'd be interested to see how he adapts to Formula 3 machinery and the tyre.
And his teammates as well, yet to be announced, but some pretty good names announced on there as well. One of them, I say teammates, some possible big names that he could be with. Kasper Stuka, I think, one that he was testing with, that catching the eyes of many as well, given the performances he put in. Is that a driver, given what he did in F4, that you'd like to see make the step up possibly?
I think so. Some people decide that they skip FRECA. Maybe Antonelli is going to set a trend off that some of them skip skip sort of F3 and then jump into F2. But it's that doesn't necessarily sort of a set route that drivers have to take. The drivers have the availability or if they can afford it, of course, to do testing in the old GP3 cars. So there is that option. So if he's done plenty of testing, behind the scenes, ready to jump up into F3, then yeah, I'd like to see him make that step up.
Yeah, it could be a really good one. Let's keep moving then. Well, you mentioned FRECA, of course. That's where we could see some drivers going. One driver who stays in there, Jeroen, is Alessandro Giusti, who's joining ART Grand Prix. Makes the switch from G4 Racing, and he's been signed as a Williams Driver Academy member. Did a fantastic job with G4 last year. He got them their best ever result, 6th overall. Got 3 wins for them along the way. I mean, he put them in places we hadn't really seen them too many times, it has to be said. So it's unsurprising that he's caught the eye of although they didn't do so well in FRECA last year, an F2 winning team and also a Formula 1 team as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Giusti is one of those young drivers that I definitely will keep my eye on this year. I mean, I'm a relatively old man, so I still think it's amazing that these kids, he's 17 sort of, and he's already, got a French F4 title in his back pocket, has already a season in FRECA. And despite that young age, I mean, they're so mature already. So yeah, I'm very, very curious to see how he will do. Clearly, Williams sees something in him. And if you're into numerology, this is an interesting thing. His first season in French F4, he came 6th in the championship. The next year, he won the championship. He finished 6th last year in FRECA. So might this be another championship year coming up for him?
Well, I like the sound of that. Let's see how the team go. It really is a season where they similar to F3. I guess they need to find something. But we saw Prema do that after a struggling first season, didn't they? And they came back with some force. If anyone can do it, I think it's them. Let's go to F1 Academy next. There's been some signings there. We got a few to get through here. We're going to start with a team we just mentioned there, Prema Racing. Of course, 10 F1 seats to fill in terms of drivers who are going to be in F1 liveries, and 3 of those have now been, or 3 more of those have now been filled. One of them has gone to Doriane Pin, who's going to be representing Mercedes on the grid next year. She's been signed to Prema Racing. He's also going to be joining the Mercedes Junior Driver Program as well. Alice, I mean, some people, I guess, a bit of an unconventional signing in a way. She was racing in the World Endurance Championship. Now she's gone to F1 Academy. But I guess with the prizes at stake, a great opportunity for her to progress through the single-seater ladder here.
Yeah, I mean, she's light up the world, hasn't she? In the GT world, she's done a very good job, and she's doing a solid job, I have to admit, in the UAE Championship at the moment, so it's quite hard to make that switch. It's not often a route that you see drivers take. So Jamie Chadwick was one of those actually who started off sort of in the GTs and then switched across as well. So I think she's obviously going to be very, very competitive. I know she's spent a lot of time sort of doing testing in 2023 in preparation for this year. So that plan, by the sounds of it, has been there for a long time. But with Prema as well, they are obviously the reigning champions. They're going to be extremely competitive. And I know we're touching on another announcement of a driver there later on. They've got a pretty strong lineup so far.
Yeah, as you mentioned, Maya Weug and Tina Hausman, which we'll come to later. But her performances were recognised as well, weren't they? She won an award for her performances with Iron Dames, or with Prema rather, as well in the World Endurance Championship, and has done some stuff with Iron Dames as well, which she will continue to do this year. So I guess a great opportunity for her to continue racing with Iron Dames and in sports cars, and also do F1 Academy as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. She's going to be busy this year. That's for sure. But I think she can hopefully combine the two for herself anyway very well. The Iron Dames give fantastic support to their drivers. The entire team there do a great job in supporting, whether it be Michelle, who's a very experienced driver, down to Dorian, who's a great talent. So she's got a great team behind her. And as I said, she's certainly going to be, I think you can pin her as certainly one of the favourites for the F1 Academy title.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that's a lot of people agree on. Having a Mercedes fighting at the front on an F1 weekend is not something unusual either, as well, is it? We're going to come back to the other F1 Academy in a sec. I want to quickly pick up on another story. We were talking Formula 3, a driver we've been used to seeing in Formula 3, Caio Collet, someone we're clearly not going to be seeing anymore because he has been testing over in the States. But before we talk about Indy NXT Test in Jeroen, he's also been announced as a Nissan Formula E reserve and simulator driver as well. Could this be somewhere we see him more of, do you think, going forward? Do you think Formula E could be a path for him at some stage? I mean, he's clearly shown some great talent throughout his junior career, but we have seen him doing some stuff over in the States, which we'll come on to in a sec. But I guess another good opportunity for him here as well.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, he's done 3 years in Formula 3, finished in the top 10 of the championship every year, but never quite made a real title challenge there. Longer down, of course. I mean, I guess sort of Formula E could be a possibility for him, but I do think a lot of it depends on what will happen in the US with him, because as I've been told, yes, he has the reserve driver role with Nissan, but he's free to race in other championships, and I'm pretty convinced that he will, because as far as I am told, he will definitely be on the Indy NXT grid in 2024, and then of course, if that turns out to be a success, who knows what happens after that.
Yeah. Well, we could see him push through that grid. We'll come back to Indy next in just a second. Let's go back to one of the teammates then that's going to be fighting with Doriane Pin, and I think pretty extensively throughout the grid is going to be Mercedes versus Ferrari, because Maya Weug has been announced that she's going to be stepping over from FRECA to race in F1 Academy. She's going to be joining Prema Racing, and she's going to be in the Ferrari car, Alice. I mean, this is a really exciting announcement for the championship, given she was the only driver that really put points on the board for KIC. It's been a team that has always, I guess, struggled to put those points on the board, but she did really well last season, didn't she, for that team?
Yeah, I think she did an excellent job, and it's a shame. Say a shame. It's great to have her in the championship, but obviously from her point of view, I'm guessing she would have liked to have either jumped up to F3 or continued in FRECA. I have heard a rumor that she's also combining FRECA as well. Whether that's true or not, who knows?
Wow.
We'll wait to see. But no, I think she again is going to be a favorite. You'd be silly not to label her as a favorite. And as I said, that driver lineup, especially with Doriane and Maya, is so strong, such a strong lineup. So I think F1 Academy is going to be extremely competitive this year, and I have a feeling that it's going to be even tougher than it was last year. And adding to that they're going to quite a few street circuits. We've got Jeddah. I mean, what a place to start your season off. Miami, Singapore, with Qatar. There's quite a few circuits that are pretty tricky. So it'd be interesting to see how they all get on. But there's some great experienced drivers that we've got lined up for F1 Academy, and certainly the Prema one is looking very strong at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, that lineup alone, isn't it? It's going to be a tough battle in that, let alone the other F1 back drivers we've got in other teams as well, which we'll talk about in just a second. Let's quickly talk about the Indy NXT and what we've got going over there, Jeroen, because we've been waiting for the opportunity to get you on to talk about this. Testing kicked off. Tell us who's been over there testing and who could be the ones to watch this season.
Yeah, so indeed, earlier this week we had the first series test of 2024 at Sebring, an old airfield in Florida. 2 full days of testing. Problem was lots of rain, and only on the second day in the afternoon there was a bit of dry running, so it's a bit difficult to make firm judgment. But I think especially for the viewers here, it's important to remember that Indy NXT works differently from series like Formula 2, Formula 3, FRECA. There is no set amount of entries that teams will have to fill. It's much more demand and funding driven. Now, in the tough years before the pandemic, that meant that we had for a while grids of only 7 to 8 full-time cars. But now in the recent years, we've seen pretty strong growth. And now we're tracking for 21, 22 cars in 2024, which of course is very healthy. So far, we've had like 17 drivers confirmed. Now, and the big powerhouse in Indy NXT is HMD Motorsports. And they this season will field no less than 10 cars. So they basically take half the grid for their on their account. They were the drivers' champions the last 2 years. Christian Rasmussen last year and Linus Lundqvist from Sweden the year before. They're once again firm favorites. They got some strong sophomore drivers like Nolan Siegel and Reese Gold, both Americans. But then there's also a few exciting rookies. Miles Rowe, the 2023 USF Pro 2000 winner. He's been really, really strong in recent years. He will be with HMD. And the aforementioned Caio Collet, according to my intel, will very likely also be at HMD. And yeah, I think he will be immediately a front runner. Now, who is their big rival? That is Andretti Global. And our British viewers will know that. There's two sophomore Brits there, Louis Foster, who won also the Indy Pro 2000 championship 2 years ago, and Jamie Chadwick. And to be honest, Jamie Chadwick in the rain and Louis Foster in the rain, they looked very good at Sebring. So keep an eye on them. And then there's some smaller teams. There's Cape Motorsports, which announced a technical partnership with Andretti earlier this week. We at FIA Series, we reported that back in October already, but that became official this week. And they have a 2 times NASCAR Mexico champion, Salvador de Alba, in that car. So that's also a name to look out for. And another name I would say is Juncos Racing. They have the second female driver in the field, Lindsay Brewer, who at the moment of recording has 2.7 million followers on Instagram. It will be a steep learning curve for her. She comes over from USF Pro 2000. But she has really steadily improved her pace in the tests in recent months. So that will also be a name to look out for.
Oh, great insight there. I mean, yeah, great to hear about the likes of Foster and Chadwick going well there as well from some of the British fans. If we're going to take bias, I mean, Foster is a crazy him just having too many incidents, I think, last year as well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And Chadwick definitely got better as the season went on.
Definitely.
But, Miles Rowe will be an interesting one as well, won't he? He drove very well to get that title. So he's an absolutely prospect. And Collet, no doubt, as well. So I think Indy NXT is in a very good place by the sounds of it, Jeroen.
Absolutely, yeah. And Louis Foster, definitely I would say a favorite for the title this year.
It's going to be very good to watch. And we do get coverage as well over this side now for those British fans, I guess. So let's talk F1 Academy. We're going to wrap this section up now, Alice. One more announcement to cover, and that is with Campos Racing, who announced that they are going to be signing Chloe Chambers, not a new driver to people who follow the support series in F1. She did race W Series in 2022. She's going to be representing Haas on the grid as well. So she's not a completely new face, but she seemed to step away from single seaters slightly. She did do Formula Regional Oceania, but did some Porsche stuff last year. Great to have her back, and she's going to be taking the representation for Haas. I mean, I suppose you were in the paddock plenty and did watch a lot of W Series. What do you rate her chances going into this season?
Yeah, I think she'll be strong. You know, she had flashes. Obviously, it was her rookie season in W Series in the regional cars. So obviously, this is sort of it's definitely a sort of a step back, really, in terms of power, for sure. So I think she'll be strong. You know, obviously that there's no sort of rules in F1 Academy in terms of what testing you can do. So I'm sure that she'll be out getting some mileage in somewhere. The testing kicks off not too soon, not too far away, should I say, for F1 Academy. So we'll get a better idea of how she gets on there. But as I said, she had some flashes of some great driving speed in W Series in her rookie year on tough circuits, of course. And that, again, those that have come from W Series will have a little bit of an advantage in terms of circuits like, let's say, Miami and Singapore, because obviously they visited those circuits in that championship. So she'll be one of them. And I would say one to watch. Whether she'll be fighting right at the very front, who knows? Because as I said, there's some girls that are extremely fast and have got some F4 already under their belts. So we'll have to keep an eye.
And just, I guess, in general, what your thoughts on the grid that we have so far? I mean, it's looking incredibly competitive from the people taking those F1 seats alone. I mean, I look particularly towards Mercedes, Ferrari, Alpine, as well. Sauber, another one. I mean, it's looking like a really good grid, and we still have the Red Bull and AlphaTauri seats to fill.
Yeah, I mean, I think I roughly know who's sort of possibly going to be in those seats, and there's certainly some returning drivers, quite a few returning drivers that I'm expecting to see on the grid, and of course, we'll have some new ones coming in possibly too. So I honestly think, looking even at the grid without these new drivers announced, it's going to be such a strong year. It's going to be very, very competitive, and they had some great races, and they're going to some amazing circuits. I have to say, I'm very jealous at some of the circuits they're getting to visit. That Jeddah circuit I absolutely love, certainly on a simulator at least. So some great racing expected, and I'm interested to see how Maya and Doriane fare up against each other, because obviously they were together sort of at the Iron Dames, but now they're posting against each other, you could say, as a Mercedes and Ferrari driver in the Prema cars. So that'll be interesting. And obviously we've got Rodin as well, Abby Pulling, who's going to be out to try and make sure that she's further up the field than she was last year.
Yeah, and the fact it's going out now live, isn't it, as well, and on such a huge platform. I think we've got some drivers here over the next few seasons that are really going to push forward. I think F1 Academy is really in a good place, and it's only just getting started. And we've got some real stars on our hands in the making there. Let's talk quickly, Jeroen, about talking about stars in the making. We have some over in the Middle East at the moment as well. A couple of those F1 Academy drivers over there racing as well. Doriane Pin, one of them, as Alice mentioned, in the top 10 in F4 UAE. Let's talk quickly about some of the other drivers that are out there racing as well. Taylor Barnett, by the time this goes out, round 2 might already be over, so we won't talk too much about what happened at round 1. But some great drivers over there, isn't there? I mean, Taylor Barnard was leading the way after the first round. Freddie Slater, I mean, that's another one. I know, Alice, you'll know very well from karting as well. We've got some real stars over there. Anyone catching your eye in particular, Jeroen?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm just very curious as to Alice's earlier point, just to see how Doriane Pin makes that transition from GTs into open wheel, and based at least on that first round, I think that's going pretty well, and she'll only get better as she gets more comfortable and gets more mileage under her belt there. So yeah, absolutely. And I think sort of we also got some announcements for the Formula Regional Oceania.
Yeah.
Did you?
Yes.
I think you wanted to talk about that as well, right? And there, of course, with my America's hat on, I saw a few interesting names. The one that most jumps out for me is Mac Clark. Mac Clark is probably one of the brightest talents in Canadian motorsports. Actually, he reminds me a little bit of a very young Paul Tracy. And he will be in USF Pro 2000 this year. He's definitely a name to keep an eye on. I also saw Lucas Facuri, a young Brazilian who's been running in USF Juniors last year and will make the step up to USF 2000 this year. And also Titus Sherlock. He was the runner-up in the F4 US Championship last year. Also a very talented young American driver that could very well be going places.
Well, we must wrap this up very quickly, Alice. I'll come to you. We usually stick to transfers, but we're covering a couple of other sections. As your involvement in karting, I want to get your thoughts very quickly, because Van Amersfoort Racing and Birel ART Racing kart team announced a strategic partnership going forwards as well. Similar to myself, I guess you still have a great involvement with karting and working with young drivers in karting as well, which is fantastic. Well, what's your thoughts on this one? I know Noah Wolf's been, who's a really talented young driver, has been announced as their first driver. It seems their thinking here is to help take drivers into F4 from karting. Do you like the sound of this idea?
Yeah, I do, because it's a big step, coming from karting into a single seater with wings, and I like the fact that teams are getting involved, with the younger talent that is coming through karting. Noah Wolf, you touched on, is the first driver to represent them in OK in Europe. So he's a strong driver. He was at the front of UK karting, and anyone that's at the front of UK karting usually they're pretty good because the talents, you know, Freddie Slater we touched on, and Kian Berta, they were both at the front of UK karting, and look how they've adapted to F4 machinery. So Noah will hope that when his time comes, he'll be doing the same, and what a great opportunity that he's got with VAR.
Well, we'll wrap it up then, just to summarize where we are. In seats left, 3 in F2, 8 in F3, 15 in FRECA, 7 in F1 Academy, and we'll cover who goes where on this show. Some headlines very quickly. Atsushi Miyake has gone to 3 Bond in Super Formula. Olli Gerfer and Tim Tramnitz are part of Motorsport Team Germany for this year. Valentin Close and Luciano Morano are on Eurocup 3 for this year. British F4 Vice Champion William McIntyre has gone to GB3. Very exciting. I think we're going to see him in Formula 3 in the next year or two as well. Thomas Strauben, Dion Gauda, and Hugh Yamakoshi are all in F4 across Italian and Spanish, I believe it is. So you can catch that across feeder series, who's going where, and updated calendars for Eurocup 3 and Spanish F4 again on the socials on feeder series. You can catch who's gone where, along with all the results for Middle Eastern and Oceania Championships as well. I think that about wraps it up. Thank you very much for joining us, Alice and Jeroen. Jeroen, great debut. Alice, great return as well. Thank you very much. Been great to have you for episode 8. Thank you for joining us as well. We'll be back to do it all again for episode 9 next week. But for now, from all 3 of us and everyone here at Feeder Series, it's goodbye.